and the moderator and distinguished delegates. We are here to talk about key steps for monitoring and accountability framework. A monitoring and accountability framework for the post-2015 agenda. So obviously, we'd have to look at the agenda, the targets that program sets out, and then decide how we should be monitoring the achievements and the processes of that action program. It has been already stated that in the whatever is done with the agenda, the highest emphasis should be on transparency, on inclusiveness, and on accountability. The accountability part can be ensured mainly through the monitoring process that we develop. So we'd have to look at the targets that the agenda sets out. And from among the targets, if there are 17 or something like that, we would have to choose the crucial ones which should be given the prominence in the monitoring framework that you develop. And I have identified 3 areas for deciding on what elements should be looked at very carefully. The first area is food and hunger. So there we have to look at the special equity, the area-based equity in the process. We have to talk about the local level entities which are involved in it. We have to see how availability and accessibility of food is made available, is there in the country. And then we have also to look at an issue which is of quite vital importance in many countries, that's nutrition. And then we have to look at what are the institutions and arrangements for meeting a crisis situation, you see, relief and assistance program. And the other element in this whole group of things in under food and hunger is what kind of local level participation is there in order to meet the crisis, or in order to provide the relief, or in order to set up arrangements for meeting it in the future, meeting the crisis in the future. The second area is the poverty eradication measures, all of it, of course, connected with poverty eradication. So here you will have to make some choice, because you may not be able to keep all the 17 elements there for very thorough examination. So there the elements one should look at are the education opportunities which are being provided by the system, the country, the health issues which are in that area, and then special employment programs, and particularly for various age groups as well. Then we have to look at the infrastructure and mobility. Both physical and social infrastructure must be looked at. They should be examined. That items should be fixed there as to what should be the point of emphasis in a monitoring framework. Then there is another important issue, and that is the clientele selection. Who are the clients that you would particularly attend to? Communities, areas, backward areas. You have backward and forward areas, so that's something to look at. You have to look at the female angle, how much is female element in the clientele that you have selected, and also the children. So these are the 4 areas to be looked at in respect to the clientele selection. And then, very important in the whole game of poverty alleviation is social protection programs. Not social security. Most developing countries do not have comprehensive social security system. It's essentially social protection programs. So there you have to look at this, and particularly the protection programs that attend to the needs of the extreme poor. The third area that I said there are 3 areas is the sustainability issues. Administration of a program and the institutions that you build up in order to continue with the program when it is completed, or for even these various services that the government is delivering, we have to look at them. And then The training of the manpower that is needed for these institutions, that's another element. And then we have to look at the what is called pattern of resource use. Pattern of resource use in terms of consumption and production, because that's where sustainability becomes extremely important. Now, having looked at these elements, the next thing is to have the information on certain areas. In the current sort of scenario, we find that assistance programs are varied, and these are delivered by various agencies. ODA is not the only source of assistance programs. So there we have to look at the technical assistance that's given and the targets, which are targets and efforts. They have to be brought together from both sides. Targets and efforts fixed for the recipient countries, targets and efforts committed by the developing countries. The two parties must be treated equally. So far, the treatment has been absolutely dissimilar, asymmetric, and wrong, because all the emphasis has been given on what the developing country is doing, with very little attention given to what the commitments, how the commitments are being made by the development partners. Now, on these bases, I find that the very important thing for the new monitoring system is getting these information together. Some of this information, of course, are provided at the moment by various agencies, but some of them are not available, particularly private sector participation in production of public goods, that we do not have sufficient information on that. So this is, I just mentioned one area, but there are other things. We have to have the data on assistance and efforts of ODA agencies, the foundations, the private sector, the NGOs, and that's it. And then data on trade. That's very important, because trade has become an easy substitute and important substitute of aid. In actual life, this has happened. And therefore, we have to look at some of the data on trade, the concessions which are available, the excesses which are given, and the hindrances which are put up by certain countries. And then the final information that is needed in the information system is the data on implementation machineries, levels of decision making, rules and procurement, agency and authority for execution, delegation of responsibility to lower levels, and financial limits of such powers. When we have all of them, I think we are ready to have a monitoring framework which will encompass most of the important elements. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.